Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Committee Local Issues on 10 o'clock on Wednesday, the 29th of March 2023. Nice to see a couple of members of the public here as well as a councillor. Members of the committee, Councillor Davis is here, Councillor Mathers here. Minutes of the previous meeting, can we agree those and approve those as a correct record? All in favour? Yep. Interest, has any of the councillors got any pecuniary interest to declare? No? Okay. Admission to the public, this is a public meeting as well as being broadcast on the internet, so we've got a couple of members of the public here. We have some deputations and petitions which will be taken under item 7. Member question time is again going to be taken under item 7. There are no questions from the members of the public because we are now in purdah. So we'll move to item 7, Traffic Regulation Order 18, Order 2002, objection to proposed one-way working on part of Burn Road, Lindley. So if the officers would like to give us a presentation and then we'll move into questions.
Good morning. This is a TRO we advertised for Burn Road to create a short section of one-way working. The reason for doing this was because there was Harron Homes have just generated or created quite a substantial housing development in the area, and the concern was that vehicles using Burn Road to access Halifax Road, the numbers were going to increase, and it's not a particularly good junction, and the reason for introducing the restriction was to minimise the number of vehicles using that junction. We did advertise this previously, and we've advertised it again to comply with the procedures. We have had one objection, and the objection relates to the use of alternative signing to prevent traffic through there. We've looked at the restrictions, we've looked at the alternatives, and we consider that the original proposal for a no entry one-way working arrangement on balance is the best option.
Okay, thank you. We know, is that with you? Yep, okay. Right, Jane Carter, do you want to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. I have been resident in Burn Road for over 50 years, so my experience goes back a long way of the problems which occur because of the narrowness of the road adjacent to Halifax Road. I have read the report to the committee by Mr. Mainprice, and although I am disappointed at his recommendation, I wish, while maintaining my basic objection to the TRO proposal, to suggest actions required to ameliorate the problems which will still be a concern. There are serious dangers to vehicles facing north towards Ainley Top on Halifax Road when they intend to turn into Burn Road. They will be turning right. There is a right turning lane which is very narrow. In fact, it is narrower than a parking space, because parking space allows you room to open a door to get out. And it's very narrow, so it's essential that the person who is waiting in that lane is absolutely within the white lines. So while they're stationary, waiting to turn right, and waiting for a gap in the traffic coming southbound, frequently a long vehicle blocks the whole of the entrance to Burn Road. Now, I'm suggesting that there could be yellow hatchings across this gap of the southbound carriageway of Halifax Road to ensure that a quicker access into Burn Road can be achieved. since this is the only access that I will be able to use to access Burn Road to the part where I live. I have avoided having to wait in Halifax Road in this dangerous position when travelling north from Huddersfield by continuing to the Ainleytop roundabout to approach the access to Burn Road from the east carriageway when I only have to turn left, because I can slow down sufficiently to approach this junction so slowly that I have a view of any other vehicles parked on Burn Road or about to make an exit from Burn Road. This may be for a considerable time because there is not enough space to draw into Burn Road caused by cars parked on Burn Road immediately adjacent to the junction of the Halifax Road traffic. The traffic seeking to leave Burn Road at that point and turning to the right, which becomes a protected place by my presence in the waiting lane. And any vehicle waiting to turn right into Burn Road is in further danger from a vehicle attempting to turn out of Burn Road to the right. Consideration should be given to preventing traffic leaving Burn Road from turning right into Halifax Road or crossing both carriageways to access Birch-and-Cliff Hill Road. From experience, drivers hopefully will become aware that they would have a far safer and quicker access to Halifax Road by taking the New Hay Road via Grimescote Road to approach the M62 or the Yew Tree Road at its junction with Burn Road when seeking to reach both Lindley and the western areas of Birch-and-Cliff. There should be at least a minimal length delineated to prevent parking by enhanced double yellow lines, I mean the ones with the extra line on, to stop vehicles parking on Burn Road immediately by the access from Halifax Road. Only last week I was turning from the southbound carriageway into Halifax Road, and there was a
Wrap up, please.
yes, and there was a car parked immediately in that part, and the back of my vehicle was sticking out into Halifax Road, which is a very vulnerable place to be. It may not be appreciated that the width of the pavement on the east side of Halifax Road from its junction with Rock Road to the housing is only 43 centimetres, and the draft caused by high-sided vehicles draws a person into the carriageway. Therefore, most local resident pedestrians fortunately avoid using the Burn Road junction with Halifax, but any who do not realise these dangers are in considerable jeopardy. I note that there are a number of references to monitoring on the potential problems affected by the imposition of the TRO, and hope my further suggestions to solve these problems will be given due consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Switch your microphone off. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Chair. As a councillor in Lindley, obviously, I represent the residents of the small hamlet at the top of Burn Road near the Halifax Road junction. I'd like to thank the officers for obviously the measures that they've implemented at the moment, which go towards reducing flow of traffic towards that problematic junction. I think we can all agree that reducing the potential for accidents at that junction is very important, because it's such a bad junction. If you're coming from Huddersfield and you're wanting to turn right onto Burn Road, it's a very small, tight, angled turn right, and it's very difficult for vehicles to get across there at busy peak times, because as Mrs Carter has alluded to, the road markings are not brilliant at the moment. They're actually very eroded, so possibly that's something that could be looked at further down the line. But in terms of the concerns that we've got with this specific TRO, and notwithstanding the wider concerns that have been suggested today, and I hope by Mrs Carter, and I hope those will be given consideration, my concern is that the no entry sign that's in place at the moment, which restricts residents' access to Burn Road, will actually create more of a problematic flow of traffic onto leaving and onto Halifax Road, because they're not able to access Burn Road from Grimescar Road direction. I think it's great that there are signs on Yew Tree Road that say no through access to Halifax Road, and I absolutely am not trying to make this a rat run. It's absolutely something I would want to avoid. What I would like to know, if it is possible for consideration to be given for the potential for residents to have access to the Burn Road hamlet from the Grimescar Road direction. That is something, obviously, I've raised with council officers. I appreciate this is something that may need extra consideration, and it is obviously something that I would be very supportive of if it could be given. I recognise, obviously, Mrs Carter's made other suggestions about double yellow lines and replacing some of the pavement with extra parking. Obviously, those are side issues as far as this TRO is concerned, but maybe those could be looked at a later date. And again, I'm conscious that displacing parking is something that might not have the full support of residents in the area. However, those things may need to be surveyed or looked into at a later date. But the main request really is for consideration on an access, except for access below the no entry, because I believe, as it's being a no entry effectively for a couple of years, people are already aware that they can't go through there. So that should hopefully mitigate anybody who was trying to transgress those laws as far as that was concerned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Before I hand it back to officers, just a couple of points that we should point out is this is only a year because there was an oversight some time ago, and as you rightly pointed out, this has been operating for a couple of years now, highly successfully, and it was a planning requirement of the development by, you just put your microphone on, by the developers of the houses there. So in a way, our hands are pretty much tied because it was a planning regulation. But I'll hand over to officers and see if they've got any further comments on that, and then we'll ask the members of the committee if they have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Just to note, there is a scheme planned for the A629 Halifax Road between the Inner Top Roundabout and the Cavalry Arms Junction. Part of that scheme includes a review of all the parking and waiting restrictions. We hadn't initially included Burn Road as part of that review of park and waiting restrictions, but I can write to the project manager and ask him if we can include Burn Road junction as a review of those restrictions. I take the point about the hatching markings as well, and I'll include that in the letter as well to the project manager. Just to note as well, part of the restriction also includes the reduction of speed limit from 40 mile an hour to 30 mile an hour along that stretch, which should also potentially help with access in and out of Burn Road.
Thank you. Members of the committee? Councillor Mather?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your deputation, Mrs Carter. Councillor Gregg, you know that every scheme is road safety of all road users is paramount. So that's a starting point. This scheme, we're sitting here retrospectively, has been operating quite successfully for at least 2 years, if not over. And it has the measures in place has reduced the flow of traffic. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't agree. It is a difficult junction, as there are many in our district and nationally up and down the country. But we have to make sure that there is a balanced approach which takes on the measures current in terms of legislation, in terms of the road users, in terms of our pedestrians. And as our officers just pointed out, no, it was the Chair saying Section 10, you know, one of the requirements of the housing development was that these measures were put in place, and restrictions to the entry has actually been quite successful, but all schemes are monitored, and if we believe it's been detrimental, I am sure appropriate measures would be put in place. So I am reassured with what appears in this report, in answering the objection, in looking at the flow, and in looking at the new developments and the current use and what's to come in terms of further improvements on Halifax roads. Thank you.
Councillor Davis, do you want to say anything?
Not a lot to add, Chair. I think Councillor Mather and yourself have outlined the key points. In particular, I think that this scheme has been running for some time now. I'm pleased to see the officers take note of some of the suggestions, and that will be raised, which I think is really useful. So certainly I think that's something that should be looked at, but absolutely in line with Councillor Mather's comments.
Okay, then we'll go to a vote. Are we in favour of the recommendations? That's carried unanimously. Can I just thank you both very much for coming, and I hope you think you've had a firecrack of the whip, and officers have listened to you and are going to go away and have a look at some of your suggestions. I think the yellow hatching is a really good idea. Obviously, the engineers will have a view on that, but from a practical point of view, I think that sounds like a reasonable idea. And as I say, they're going to go and have a look at that. So I hope you've thought it's worthwhile coming down this morning. Thank you both very much for coming. Thank you. Have a safe journey back. Right, item 8, Holmfirth Town Access Plan. We'll move on to this, and we'll have the officers and then questions from the public.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Andy Raleigh. I'm the project manager for the Holmfirth Town Centre Access Plan. I've got the principal engineer, Adam Jones, here to discuss the TROs in details and the objections. I thought it'd be worth having a quick summary of the scheme. Holmfirth Town Centre Access Plan is a £7.47 million scheme that's funded by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The scheme aims to support economic growth through investment in the public realm and also improvements at key junctions. The scheme objectives are to reduce congestion and improve accessibility by improving journey times by 12%, to encourage tourism and increase Holmfirth's visitor appeal, to maintain the character of the conservation area, to have a neutral impact on accidents and a neutral and, if possible, positive impact on air quality. As part of the scheme, we'll introduce upgrading of existing signal-controlled junctions, widening of footways, improvements to pedestrian crossings, electric vehicle charging points for both cars and bikes, improvements to public realm in and around the River Home, improvements to car parks, a cycle hub, and also the introduction of a 20-mile-an-hour zone within the town centre. I'm going to now hand over to Principal Engineer Adam Jones to talk through the TRO objections.
So formal TRO consultation took place between the 20th of January and the 10th of February. There's been 2 objections. The first objection relates to extending the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit onto the A6024, which is Huddersfield Road. And the second objection is to the change from the existing zebra crossings to signal-controlled crossings. So picking up on the first objection, the extension of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit onto Huddersfield Road. This is actually outside of the original scope of the works, and therefore wasn't included in the original concept design. We have, however, through consultation and through the design process, looked to extend the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, and we've done so along Lower Mill Lane and Rocher Road we also tried to incorporate this onto Huddersfield Road, but we found that by discussion with the transport modelling team, that if we did that, we wouldn't actually achieve the primary scheme objective, which is a 12% improvement on journey times through the modelling work. It should also be noted that on Huddersfield Road, there are no existing patterns of accidents which suggest that the A6024 should be reduced to 20 miles an hour. So on that basis, I think that the scheme should stay as is and the objection should be overruled. So I don't know if you want to pick up on the first objection, then we'll move on to the second objection. That's me done.
Okay.
Do you want me to do the second one as well? Or?
You may as well, yes, and then we can, because they'll all be one person speaking on them.
Right, okay, no problem. So the second objection relates to the change from zebra crossings to puffing crossings on Victoria Street and Towngate. The existing zebra crossings lead to significant congestion issues in Holmfirth, and members of the public have come forward and asked us to provide mitigation to this, which we've done in the form of signal control crossings. This element is integral to the scheme. The pedestrian crossings and the Huddersfield Road, Victoria Street, the crossing on Victoria Street and on Towngate will be linked to ensure that traffic can flow correctly through that junction and to hold traffic back when pedestrians are using the two crossings. We have considered alternative locations for these crossings, so we did look for putting a crossing further up Towngate, and we found that there was issues with visibility if we did that. We also looked at moving the Victoria Street crossing further up Victoria Street and found that this conflicted with shops and the Market Walk access. So we located the crossings on the same location as zebra crossings. These are also the desire lines that pedestrians are used to using, so we felt it most appropriate to locate them at those two locations. The crossings themselves have been through a stage 1 and stage 2 road safety audit process, and there's been they've been approved through that process as well. So again, I conclude that we should proceed on the basis of the signalised crossings being located at the locations that we've indicated.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Dorrell, if you'd like your 5 minutes.
Tom. Right. My objection's already been dismissed as being a personal opinion by a member of the Cabinet. However, I try as an academic, a senior lecturer at Huddersfield University and a research fellow at University of Leicester to base whatever I say not just on opinions but research and scientific evidence and academic papers. And there's quite a lot on this which seems to have been ignored. With regard to the speed limit, I have no objection to 20 miles an hour. I think you should go further. Honley has just issued their report yesterday on the future of Honley, and they're calling for 10 mile an hour speed limits with speed bumps in the centre. But the 20-mile limit in Holmfirth is ridiculous because on one street you have both a 20 and a 30 mile an hour limit. The engineer has been very good. His responses to my objections were very good and correct. However, he's completely shackled by the idea of increasing traffic flow by a minimum of 12%. Putting in a reduced speed limit reduces the amount of carbon that is produced. If you have the 30, you're going to have more carbon. Also, not only more carbon, you're also going to have more rubber. The EU next year is introducing a regulation for cars which will reduce the size of tyres because tyre degradation and the pollution from that is even more serious than the carbon. The speed limits, so I'd like to see the speed limits all 20 miles an hour and actual fact reduced. If you are committed to climate change, and today's report from the Climate Change Commission says that Britain is strikingly unprepared for this, and Kirklees is doubly so, then you should look at this. There is research on this, and what you're doing is based on bad science. A lot of people think that idling is a serious problem. It is. However, research from the University of Leeds shows that actually increasing traffic flow is a much more serious problem than idling, because idling of cars now with current modern cars is much more efficient. Turning your car on and off is much less damaging than increasing traffic flow. And the research shows that if you increase traffic flow, it automatically increases the number of cars and the pollution because people speed up. Now, I object to the puffing crossings because there is research. There is a 110-page report from London Transport, which is the basis why London no longer uses puffings, nor does Birmingham, nor do other towns. Because pedestrians, and you made the point about road safety, regard them as being unsafe. They do not like crossing on puffings. There is not a light at the other end, and the chief engineer has made it clear that he's not going to go along with the modelling for the installation of puffings, which is put out by the Transport Department. No puffing should be put within 20 or 30 metres of a junction. It's not a good idea. There should be a rail, there should be a light on the other side, and the pavements should be extended. The research shows that on puffins, they are successful for a short time. Then people dislike them, pedestrians dislike them, because they don't know what's behind them. They don't like the weight, and you've deliberately done this to increase traffic flow, which means that it's not for the pedestrians first. So what actually happens is people start to cross the road anyway, and they just walk across without bothering with the lights or anything. This is one of the reasons why it's not used in other towns and cities. So overall, I think this is a really bad plan, because you are admitting that you are putting cars first, pedestrians second, and bikes way in the past. Yes, it is true you're putting in some E-points for bikes, but there's nothing specific on the road to aid bicycles. I've spoken to dozens of people, cyclists in Holmfirth clubs, etc. They do not like coming into Holmfirth because they regard it as being dangerous. There is too much traffic, and you're going to increase traffic. The highway code says there is now a priority. I will. There is a priority of first, pedestrians, second, cyclists, third, cars. In the autumn, the government is bringing in a manual for the streets which will codify the highway code, which will put that into law, and you are breaking it. On a final point, I requested a carbon report on all of this. The FOI I put in was long delayed. The young man who dealt with it, he was very good, he apologised. I knew why it was delayed when I received it. The carbon assessment report was dated the day I put in the request for a carbon request. I've shown it to an independent member of the Independent Commission, which was set up by Kirklees 4 years ago to look into climate change. He just laughed. It's not very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and giving us your thoughts. Officers, any response to any of those points?
I'm happy to come back on the carbon impact assessment question. As part of the assurance process for West Yorkshire Combined Authority, we have a rigorous process that we have to go through in producing a carbon impact assessment. This is assessed independently by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority when we put the business case in. And we've had the approval on that. The carbon impact assessment is based on the Highways England process, and so the question that is not appropriate or relevant, I would question. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to pass on to Adam on the other points.
Yeah, just picking up on some of your comments regarding the crossings. I know that the research that you've looked at is London research, and they're specific to London crossings, not to the national situation. So then we have to refer to the LTN guidance, and the LTN guidance does have a preference for crossings being located 20 metres from a junction. But that's for one individual crossing. What we've got here is a situation where we've got linked crossings. So we've got linked crossings that are going to be holding traffic back. We've got de facto one-way street on Holligate as well, which is going to reduce traffic on that junction. And Durnford Road, there's going to be clear visibility of both crossings. So it's a different situation to the one that you're describing. And so we have to take an engineering judgment on that, and that's why we pass it through the stage 1 and stage 2 safety audit process to ensure that there's no safety issues related to those crossings, and that will be monitored again for a 12-month period as part of the stage 4 safety audit process. In terms of guardrail itself, there is a UK policy to declutter streets to reduce guardrail. And if you look at LTN 209, it clearly states that it is recommended that the installation of new guardrails should not be considered if alternative safety measures could be used. And in this instance, we are introducing additional safety measures in terms of including footway improvements, speed reduction, we're reducing the speed down to 20 miles an hour, and ensuring that crossings are on desire lines, which is what we're doing. So that kind of removes that point. And like we've obviously seen the scheme in terms of cyclist provision, we have to work within the bounds of the existing highway. So it'd be fantastic to include cycle tracks, etc., but we don't have the width to be able to do that. So we've accommodated cycle provision within the bounds of what we've got. We're restricted by that. So we have put in new cycle stands. We've linked Holligate and Huddersfield Road for pedestrians. We've got a cycle hub that's going on Huddersfield Road. So we have considered the hierarchy and the design that we've provided.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll bring members in before I have my 2 pence on this. Councillor Mather. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your deputation. Home First, we've recently been told, has been voted one of the top 10 places to live. So very successful. And I do object to hearing that we may be in breach of any legislation. It's taken a long time for the scheme to, we've worked on this, we've done it time and again, we've done at least 3 consultations. We've considered all the options. It's not the only thing that, you know, what you see is not what was on the table. We've considered other options. Climate change, I remember chairing the cross-party working group, which brought about the independent commission. We are very, very serious. It's not just one thing. There are many things to improve us going forward. So I am sure that everything put forward in this scheme will, to some extent, future-proof, and as other policies come into being, and there are going to be the Home First plan that's going to come, and there'll be further improvements. So I personally think, and I have been out several times during Councillor McBride's time about the scheme. It's a fantastic scheme that we're putting forward. I'm not saying that it's, you know, we won't ever go back and make further improvements. You have to cut nowadays, cut your cloth according to your means, and budgetary constraints do actually come into play, but we're not saying that it's hindered the scheme that's being promoted today. Modelling's been done, and I'm confident that all road users would benefit. It's not just the road users, it's not just the reduction in journey time, it's a combination of things. So the signalised crossing would allow us more control, freer flow of traffic. I know you might not agree with me, but what I'm saying is we have to take everything on balance, and road safety is paramount, and this scheme has considered it thoroughly, and I do think that what it brings is a safer home first, safer for pedestrians, safer for road users, and I'm really, really pleased to hear that we have included active travel, the wider road footpaths. Now, you can't widen highways in places which were built in times where there was less traffic. There's only the width of the highway that you've got to play with. There's only so many things. And I also like the idea about decluttering. I hate the idea. Aesthetically, it's not pleasing to the eye or the environment. And if fatalities or other, accidents will happen, but I'm saying railing isn't the only way to prevent any accidents from occurring. I do think that what we've put in place in terms of signalised traffic control, it's better as we move forward. There's better technology which gives us more control, and it is being future-proofed in terms of having cycle racks, having car parking, wider footpaths, the ability to charge your electric motor vehicles. But what we've got to understand is, for the present time, not everybody will be in electric vehicles. Not everybody will have vehicles that they can sit around idling in, because those electric vehicles are quite costly. I know we're talking about Home Firth, and it's a very successful town. We want it to be more successful, but we want the ability for people that come to enjoy our towns and villages much more, and this scheme will enhance that. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I forgot to say that, you mentioned about highway legislation and so on. The recent legislation this scheme is putting the pedestrian at the heart. You're saying no, but my officers do assure that it is, and I'm confident, and we can continue. Let's get it on the way, and we can continue the monitoring. If things aren't working, we can make adjustments, as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Yep, this scheme's come a long, long way, hasn't it? I think we have, all three of us have been involved to some degree in it. The initial scheme that was proposed certainly absolutely prioritised road users over pedestrians, would have made a hugely detrimental impact on Holgate. And I would certainly have said that scheme, which effectively almost created a large roundabout within Home Firth, would have encouraged more traffic in. What we've got here is a very different scheme, and to say from the outset, it is a compromise, as most things are. This scheme certainly does take on board the need to make the life of pedestrians a lot more pleasurable within the centre of the town. There will be increased width of pavements, and also pavements where they currently don't exist on Holgate, together with a way of crossing the river through where the current site of the old market hall is as well. So creating accessibility for a whole range of people, from whether we're talking with disabled individuals, mothers, fathers with children, and less able people. So there is a significant element of focus on pedestrians. It's absolutely not 100%. It is not, if we could pedestrianise Home Firth, that would be wonderful. We're a long way away from that, but I certainly don't accept that this does not take account of pedestrians, does not try and focus on pedestrians in terms of that. And I think officers have outlined that as well. In terms of the traffic flow, the scheme started off, as I said, absolutely just as a traffic scheme. What we've managed to do, and I give a lot of credit to officers for this, I think they've done an amazing job, and an amazing job of convincing the combined authority as well, that we can include the significant public realm works that have been involved in this, which weren't there in the first place, because the WICA funding was essentially it was for a traffic scheme. End of story. The aim is to improve efficiency of traffic flow. We'll have to wait and see. I think time will tell if it does. I don't necessarily believe that means increased flow in terms of increasing more traffic, but again, that will have to be reviewed and monitored. But it is certainly all about efficiency in that respect. And 12% is not huge. And as I say, I think officers have done a good job of convincing the combined authority that that's sufficient to receive the funding. So it is a compromise. So I regard it as almost a first stage. I think that's what we've said as local councillors, that what we're doing here is something that can be built on and improved for the future. The previous scheme certainly didn't allow that, because we would have ended up with something which we couldn't have built on. It would have been pretty much set the pattern for the town. So I'm very comfortable with this. I certainly believe we need to keep a review, we need to monitor, and we need to keep our minds open to further changes in the future, absolutely. But I do think it's a good scheme as it stands at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I've been going through, round, up, down Holmfirth for the best part of 50 years, probably longer than anybody else in this room. And I've seen it grow from not quite a one-horse town. It had a couple of horses back when I was very young. And it's grown, and it's grown. Traffic through there has grown. The shops, it's become a really successful economic centre for Kirklees. It's become thriving compared to what it was many, many years ago. There's always been an issue with traffic through Holmfirth. As traffic generally grew in the country, people could afford cars. The problem is, of course, it's what it is. It's an ex-West Yorkshire mill town that has a road that goes through it, through two bends and over a river. It's complicated. No scheme ever is probably perfect. There's always has to be compromises. We seem to be talking about this particular scheme for forever. I think somebody mentioned we've had 3 consultations, at least 4 or 5 different schemes. And in the previous role in the council, I've been out to look at 3 or 4 different schemes, walk around Holmfirth with officers, come up with the different ideas. So this has not been an easy project to get off the ground. Most of the public now seem to have accepted that this is the plan that gives the best we can for Holmfirth, given, as we've been mentioned by officers and other colleagues, the restrictions of its size and its buildings, etc. I'm not convinced about this, about people who are worried about puffins. I think that will absolutely help the residents of Holmfirth. The traffic, if you get a situation where the Woodhead or M62 is shut, which I once tried to get through there, not knowing that was shut, it took me 3/4 of an hour to get from the little computer shop through which you can see where you're going. So we know, as I said, we know something needs doing, and I think that allowing traffic to be split up and allowing the public to cross safer is a real benefit. So yeah, as I said, no scheme's perfect, but it's the best we can do, and I think this really solves a lot of the problems in Holmfirth. And I'm looking forward to, after what, as I said, seems a lifetime, that we might be able to get some spades in the ground, should the Cabinet agree, and move this forward eventually. Members, would you like to vote on this? That's unanimous, 3 members. Thank you very much for your deputation. It was very interesting, raised some very valid points, and as I said, we never please everybody. We aim to try and please as many people as we can. We accept we never please everybody. Thank you very much for coming along and expressing your opinions. Thank you very much. Members, thank you very much. Officers, thank you very much. Some very detailed reports, and one of us said that Holmfirth has been a piece of work that's gone on for a number of years, so thank you very much for the time and effort you're putting over the years with all the various different schemes for that, and I think we finally got one that we can work with in OFAS. So thank you very much for your time on that. Thank you very much for coming along this morning. End of meeting. Thank you very much.